All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 22nd New Grantee Staff Transition Committee meeting. This month, we're going to start reviewing some of the documents that are required or suggested to make your lives easier when it comes to reporting or possibly even applying for a future grant and things of that nature. So I'm going to be popping up a few documents on the screen today. If you need any of these, I will also drop a link into the chat so that you can figure out where these documents are located. And then the last thing that I'm going to ask is if each of you wouldn't mind just popping into the chat, telling us who you are and who you're with. I think we'll go ahead and do our introductions that way. So just, again, open up that chat. And please drop in your name and what organization or site you're with. Okay, and I'm going to start immediately with sharing a screen, which I need to find here real quick, sorry. So the first screen that I'm going to share with everybody is our FY21 RFA. So this document is in the RFA application packet, and there's a couple of pages that I want to pull out. Even if you're not applying for a grant this year, I want to draw your attention to a couple of these documents because they can be helpful for you to think about planning for the future, as well as the types of documentation you're going to need to be reporting on throughout the duration of your current cohort grant. So the page that I'm going to refer to right out of the gate is actually found on page 14 and 15. And these are questions that we're asking all of our applicants to complete. But where I really want to draw your attention as I scroll down here with this highlighted section is if you were to apply for a grant in the future, this section or these types of questions are things that you are going to be asked. So kind of be thinking about these things as you're implementing your full grant. So right out of the gate, we're going to want to know if you're in compliance with your grant. Now, what does compliance mean? And I'll give you a few examples, but Vic, please feel free to jump in here as well.
Okay.
If you are in, the way you achieve non-compliance, which is not something you want to do, is not filing your reports on time, not filing your reports, period, failing to communicate with Vic at the Department of Education on pertinent matters, not participating in your committees, failing to follow statute or guidelines as directed for the grant, misappropriation of funds. Vic, what else have I missed here?
Well, let's add this. The goal isn't to find people in non-compliance. We want to keep you in compliance. And so if, we see something, I'm going to communicate with you right away so that we can fix the problem. And, for the majority of people, if there's something that they didn't do correctly, we can fix that within usually a couple of days.
Right. Yeah, and that is a really good point too. This is not, this grant fund is not a punitive grant fund. We want you to succeed and we want you to be able to serve kids to the best of your ability. But the overall response to this is just simply that we need you to make your best efforts on behalf of the kids that you're serving. So if you have questions at any time about compliance or attendance or finance or things like that, that's why Vic is here for you. You can certainly reach out to him. And as he said, if we notice something that has the potential to move you towards non-compliance, we're going to make those steps necessary to make sure that you get the support you need. I'm going to move on to the next few questions, but at any time, feel free to unmute and ask a question, or you can drop it into the chat. The next thing we want to know is, did you meet your attendance goals for the last 2 years? And if you remember, your attendance goals are at those 70 and 80% thresholds. So that'll be something that you'll want to think about. We do ask, I don't know what happened there on my screen, sorry. We do ask that you provide your enrollment numbers, your average daily attendance. So that's a good thing to be able to track moving forward. We also want to know, did you meet your academic goals? And then of your local evaluation goals, how many of those did you meet? And we have it broken down by percentage here. We also want to know how many office referrals have been reduced over the past 5 years of your grant. So again, this is if you were to be applying in the future. But office referrals is something that's a very valuable piece of data that you can certainly track annually. We'll want to know if you provided those children a snack or if you're providing a full meal. We'll also want to know in the last year, how many parent engagement meetings did you have? How many field trips did you have? If you're charging fees, and then how many community partners do you have here as well? And you'll see that we have our breakdown this way. We'll want to know about your required committee work. And just for your information, Brittany and I from the Alliance, who kind of help to facilitate those meetings, we take attendance at every meeting. That's why when we're on the phone with you, you'll hear us say, oh, I heard Megan chime in, I heard Sarah chime in. And also, it's important that if you happen to join a call a few minutes late or something of that nature, don't be afraid to send us a quick email to let us know that you were on the call, or chime in at the end of the call so we can collect that data. We'll also want to know about your required professional development in the last year. So you can see we have the range there. And then this is the information that really helps the RFA process. But again, even if you're in the first or second year of your cohort that you're currently representing today, we'll want to be sure that you're tracking or you're sharing some of this information moving forward, because this will make your lives so much better and easier as we progress to the future. Does anybody have any questions about this section of the RFA before we move on?
Well, I'd like to add something.
Sure.
I just found out that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has extended the free summer feeding program to the end of the school year 2021. It was going to end in December. It's now going to end in June of 2021.
Yes, which is a fantastic way to continue to support those kids. So, all right, again, please feel free to drop into the chat or unmute yourselves and jump in with a question at any time. This is going to be a pretty informal group today. The next document I want to show you is actually on page 18 of this year's RFA, and it's this Form A site information document. So this is not a required document, but it is something that can perhaps, that could be utilized by your site in the current year, just to have centralized data in a particular place. This form is designed to be able to provide kind of a quick snapshot of what it is you'd like to do with your program funding. And again, this is in the FY21 RFA application, but you can use this document for your immediate needs. So obviously this is just very general information up here that you could plug in. When we look at our next section though, what we're really looking at here is who you're going to be serving. So I would recommend to you that this document might be a nice way for you to be able to kind of track some of that trend data. So for example, your free and reduced price lunch rate, or your total enrollment, your grades to be served. And then after that, we've done some color coordination into the columns so that if you're running a before school program, that matches to the orange down here. If you're running an after school program, that matches to the blue. And then your summer program up here in this kind of red-pink color aligns down here. So how you can view, and I'm just going to stay on this page for after-school site operations, this is a nice planning document for you to be able to use. So on this section, you'll be able to put in when your program starts and ends, how many total service days you plan to provide. And again, this is Iowa. We know that you're going to have a snow day in here, there, whatever. We know that your programming could potentially be affected by a pandemic, things of that nature. This is meant to be kind of a flexible living document. You'll also want to indicate your non-service days. Again, it just kind of helps for planning coverage so that if you are, for example, my daughter has a no school day tomorrow, but maybe you would provide programming on that day. So you'll want to be able to make sure that you have a record of that in some way, shape, or form. We then move on to each day of the week, your start times and end times, how many hour days, do you have early release days, your service days, and then how many hours per day do you typically provide programming. This is going to help you to be able to readily calculate your daily attendance and your daily average. So it's just, like I said, it's just designed to be a nice, quick snapshot. You'll see there's the same information for summer. And of course, there's the same information for before school if you're running a before school program. But then there's also this section for your adult family member services. So in this section, you can talk about your quarterly family events. So describe the frequency, duration, and dosage. So once a quarter, once a month, whatever you feel is appropriate for your site. Remembering that we do say that it is best practice to have that offered minimum of quarterly. So you'll want to put dates, how long, and what you'll be doing in here, the total number of sessions that you're offering, and then here is where you can keep a tally of the total number of adult family members served. And that's just, again, it's a really nice way to be able to have all of your kind of snapshot information in one place. Does anybody have any questions about that so far? Okay, so I'm going to share a new screen now. And the screen that I'm going to share now is the iowa21cclc.com website. So first and foremost, give me a thumbs up or unmute or in the chat box if you guys can see the website screen that I'm sharing right now. All right, Sarah's got a thumbs up for me. All right, we're good. Okay, so right out of the gate, I'm going to copy this and drop it into the chat so that you can see exactly where I'm referencing. So I know I'm a little bit partial, but first and foremost, I think this website is fantastic. And then second of all, I would tell you that, and perhaps some of you don't know this, but I am a former grantee myself. I found the information on this website to be extremely valuable when I was kind of thrown into this program and said, let's make this happen. I appreciate the fact that almost every single document and piece of information that you need that is going to be required lives on this website. So bookmark this, make it your favorite, make it your launch page, whatever. This is a great place for you to be. The tab that I'm specifically going to share information with you on today is this grant info tab. And again, you'll see that we have some general information about 21st Century. We have contact information, we have partner information, professional development, committees, resources, and then we also have a grant archive. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those, but for almost the rest of this call today, we're going to really be focusing on this grant information page. So right out of the gate, as you turn to look here, there's going to be a couple of things that I'd like to point out immediately to your attention. The first is the grantee timeline and the grantee PD or professional development timeline. If you've not seen these documents, I would highly recommend clicking on them, and you'll see that when you click on that view button, it's going to pop up either a Word document, an Excel document, or a PDF document. So let me grab this for you so that you can see. So here's our grantee timeline for this year. It was updated June 5th. So there's always a little bit of wiggle room in this because this is a living document. You'll see that we have some contact information in here that you can reference fairly easily. We have some committee information in here. And then when you scroll down to the bottom, this is when we have a list of important committee dates, due dates, and things of that nature. Now, again, this is designed to be a living document. It's a little bit fluid. Sometimes if we run into a scheduling conflict with a committee, we might bump it a week or a couple of weeks, or we might change the time of something. But you can generally use this document for an overall glimpse of what is happening in any given year connected to 21st century. The professional development document, let me grab that real quick, is exactly what it sounds like. So what we've done for this one, let me pull it up on the screen. Again, for the 2020-21 school year, this again was updated in June. We have a list of professional development opportunities, some local, some national, that may be of interest to people. And you'll also see too, we have some tentative comments and things like that in here as well. But again, this will allow you to take a look to see what professional development offerings are out there. Now, one caveat that I'd like to offer with this is, in a normal time when we're not perhaps restricted in our travel due to a national pandemic, if you do want to attend an out-of-state event or conference, you do need to seek approval from Vic to be able to do that before you expend any of your grant dollars to be able to do that. Now, many of these have switched to be virtual this year. And Vic, are you still asking for people to seek approval for a virtual experience, or?
No. You only need my permission if you're going to leave the state.
Okay.
If you're going to take a plane to go to Florida, then yes, you need to ask permission.
Right.
But if you're doing it online, nope, just go ahead and do it.
All right, thank you. Okay, other couple of things I'll point out on this page. So I am back to the website page. If that's not what you're seeing, let me know. We do have our new grantee PowerPoint and orientation on here. So if you're brand new to the program, or if you need a refresher, you can certainly hop there and find it. This is also the place where we keep our EDGAR regulations. And then this next line is where I want to spend a little bit more time today, because I really want to talk through some of these templates. So right out of the gate, we have our professional development template here on the left side. This is a document, obviously when you guys are filing your financial paperwork, you have been asked to include your professional development on a quarterly basis. And that's great. I believe, and Vic, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe people are doing that reasonably well, that they're submitting their documentation on time and so on and so forth. What I want to talk about is how you can use this template to have a comprehensive collection of what it is you've done at your site with your staff through the year. Because every late summer, early fall, we do ask that you submit a professional development template back to us so that we at the Iowa After School Alliance can assist the Department of Education in identifying trends on where people were at, where are people, where you're good in your professional development, and then if there's areas that are perhaps a little bit lower in number or availability, how can we then make presentations or professional development offerings or provide support to you to kind of boost some of those sections. So this past year was due September 30th, and we still have a few outstanding sites that need to submit their professional development plan. So if that happens to be you, you'll be receiving an email communication from Vic soon regarding that. But this document is just simply designed to be the collective of what it is you have done throughout an entire fiscal year regarding professional development. So I'm going to pull it up on the screen here so you guys can see what this document looks like. And hopefully it's not completely out of bounds for anybody. We have some general information here where you put your grantee name and such. And then in this first column is where you're going to list what types of trainings you've done. The category, and I'll get to that in a moment. When you held it, how long, how many staff you trained, and then the rest of this information is what is submitted in your quarterly report. So at the bottom of this document, when it comes to our categories, this is where you're going to simply pop one of these numbers in, and there's even a drop-down menu to help you with that. So if this is a required professional development, such as bloodborne pathogen or perhaps a mandatory child abuse reporter training, that would be a number 1. If you participated in yesterday's committee call, you would put the committee, the date and the time in there, and then that would be a number 2. If it's a statewide professional development, so just like the Impact Conference that we held here now a couple of, oh gosh, almost 3 weeks ago. Boy, the time's really flown. That would be a 3. If you're doing something around whole child professional development, that's a 4. Family engagements, ways to increase your family engagement would be a 5. An academic professional development, so maybe you have a training on how to build math skills or literacy skills, that would be a 6. An enrichment professional development, so this might be something connected to things like physical education, art, music, chess is another example. That would go under there. And then if you have any other in-state professional development opportunities, that would be an 8. And number 9 is an out-of-state professional development opportunity. Does anybody have any questions about the professional development template or kind of the comprehensive nature of what we accomplish with this document?
Let me just say that we didn't make this up to create another form for you guys to fill out. We actually have to report this data. For the state, what we look for is areas that maybe somebody's doing something in social emotional learning, and maybe we might have them present at a conference. And then for the feds, they always ask me what we've been doing for professional development. And so, you know, we've all got a bunch of data to report, and we are trying to make it as straightforward as possible.
Absolutely. All right. Any questions about professional development? Again, feel free to unmute or drop into the chat. So, not hearing anything, but again, feel free to interrupt me if you do. The next thing I want to talk about is our partner list template. So some of the trainers in your professional development might actually also make it over into your partnership list as long as that meets that criteria or definition. So I want to pull up this partnership list because this document will assist you again in providing necessary data that we have to report to the feds, but then also it's a great tool that we at the Alliance take and put into the partner tab on the website so that you can search for a provider in your area to be able to provide a certain service for you. So this document, and again, let me make sure that I'm sharing here. This document is a list of all of the partners that you have accessed throughout the year. And I would give you guys just maybe this one little tip regarding both the professional development template and the partner template. I found it much easier to kind of update these documents as you went along throughout the school year instead of waiting until the very end and then trying to remember back, what did I do in September? So if it's once a month, once a quarter, whatever makes sense for you. But again, knowing that they live on the website, You can access it immediately and then save it to your own device that you can just regularly update. It's really going to save you a lot of work at the end of the school year when it seems like a ton of reports are due and there might be a little extra pressure on you at that time, that you can simply just plug in and be able to do this. So for this document, we want to know who you're partnering with. So who is the individual or the organization? Your contact at that organization, email, phone, again, really just very basic information there. What geographic area is served? And let me just look really quickly. Brittany, are you on the call today? I don't know that Brittany is on the call, but yesterday they actually decided to edit this document to make this particular area a drop down, because some people were, if you go regional or county or city, or, it gets a little bit dicey, and there's nothing worse than hopping onto the website, looking for a partner to be able to provide a certain service for you, and then finding out that they only serve Des Moines, or that they only serve Northeast Iowa, and you're hanging out down in Council Bluffs. So we're going to do some refining of this particular document to better identify those geographic areas. But just know that that's an option that you can search by. And then we want to know what type of service they provide. Is it tutoring? Is it enrichment? Is it STEM? Is it drug and violence prevention? All of this information is what you need to report to us. You'll also be able to utilize this information when you enter your APR data entry. So it's kind of a nice dual purpose form. Does anybody have any questions about the partnership form?
Crystal, let me just mention that this is required by the ESSA. So we
Yes.
have to update it every year and make it available on a website. And we're #1 in the country with almost 800 community partners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that, this is a piece of information that Vic shares a lot, but I don't think people fully recognize the value of that. Prior to COVID, I was at a conference in Colorado, and when I shared that piece of information, there were 3 other states there that you could tell immediately were jealous of our community partnership base. So that's a fantastic document to have. Again, it really helps you along the way. It also kind of serves as a nice master connection sheet, because again, God forbid something ever happened to you as a program manager or a provider or something of that nature. But if you have to step away from the program, if you're ill, if you have a baby, whatever happens in life, somebody else should be able to look at this document and have contact information and such just readily available. And that's a really nice addition for people to have. So both the professional development sheet and the partnership sheet really feed very nicely into the sustainability plan template. And that's the next document that I'm going to bring up here. So let me grab this, do a new share. So this document, which was part of your grant application when you applied, however long ago that was, this is a nice way for you to be able to track your sustainability, the in-kind value of it, and what was actually given. Is it time? Is it talent? Is it treasure? Is it supplies? Is it space? Things of that nature. But this document can be used to track that type of information, because when it comes time to have Vic come to your site, whether that be in person or virtually, and do your comprehensive site visit, you're going to want to be able to demonstrate and document your sustainability towards this program. So this is a 3-year grant with the possibility of the 2-year extension. And ultimately, the Iowa Department of Education wants to know that at the end of your 3 or 5 years, your program is still going to continue versus just being cut off and the kids are on their own. So this is a nice way to be able to document that. There's also, within this document, there's a template for a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, that you can change or edit to meet the needs for your grant. Now, you should all have MOUs in place right now. And if you don't, you might want to reach out to Vic on that, because that could be an issue. But this particular document is designed to be edited to be able to meet the needs of yourself, your site, and the partner organization that you're working with, so that everybody is on the same page as to what it is exactly they're providing. And then this can be collectively kept in one place. And then perhaps if Vic wants to see your MOUs with the church that provides you transportation on weekends or whatever, you can readily pull that out and share that document. Vic, anything to add regarding MOUs or sustainability?
Yes, when I come on and do a comprehensive visit, I'm going to want to have a meeting with those community partners and actually ask some questions, and we'll talk about the program and their contributions to the program. With the MOUs, you may have, a partner drop off, and you may add new ones. So even when you add a new one, you should be doing the MOU, because if there's a transition, you've got a record of what each partner is going to do for the program.
Absolutely. Any questions from the audience today about sustainability, either in general or as it pertains to this template? Okay, I understand that I've skipped local evaluation. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, because I do want to slide down and kind of continue on with this monitoring and comprehensive site visit documentation in here as well. So these forms are both available here. And I know, again, when I was a grantee, I would take the site monitoring form every single year. I would kind of use it as a self-assessment or a checklist. Do I have this? Is this in place? Do I have immediate access to these types of documentation? And or how are we doing in particular areas? I found that that was a really good way for me to be able to have a clear direction or focus on where I wanted to work with my site staff to be able to put together the framework for the best possible outcome for our grant. So let me pull up the site monitoring document now. Oh, and we have an error. Okay, so apologies. I will get that taken care of here. This document is also found in the RFA application materials, in the instruction materials. And it will be able to, you'll be able to see this document to see when Vic comes, again, either in person or virtually, what he'll be assessing you on and how you can use this information to improve your program. Again, that visit is not designed to be a punitive visit in nature. It's really to be able to see what it is you're doing with the funds and how you're truly making impact in the lives of the kids and the families that you're serving. Vic, what would you like to add about site monitoring?
Well, the checklist is aligned with statute for the program, so it's a little easier to read that checklist and say, oh, here's what I need to do. I recommend that over looking up the federal statute. So, we've got it publicly posted. We're not trying to surprise you and say, aha, gotcha. No, we
Right.
want you to have a good program. And as long as you're doing what's on that checklist, you'll be okay.
Yeah. So I've made a note to make sure that we do look at why that link is broken, and I'll work with our website designer to get that fixed as soon as possible, folks. So my apologies for that. I was able to pull up the comprehensive site visit document. So this is the visit that takes place after year 3. And this is what you can expect during that comprehensive site visit. So you'll see right out of the gate, number 1 here is that you're going to review the sustainability plan. And actually, let me make this a little bit bigger for everybody here too. So you're going to review that sustainability plan. Vic is going to want to meet with your program and school administration. He's going to want to review attendance data. Oh, thank you, Vic, for dropping that link in the chat.
That stuff in more than one spot.
Yes, we do. We're going to want to look at student achievement data. There'll be a meeting with the financial people connected to your grant program, a meeting with those community partners. So again, in the example we used, if you're using a church for weekend transportation, they might be a good partner to invite to this meeting so you can talk about the impact. There'll also be a meeting with parents, a meeting with program staff, and then a meeting with program administration to discuss your local evaluation. So we've also provided a quick list of the documents that will be reviewed. And again, this is at year 3. So don't panic immediately right out of the gate. But your site visit, your comprehensive site visit will take a little bit of prep work because you don't want to have Vic be there in person or be virtual and be like, oh, where did I put that? You know, so I would highly recommend coming up with either an online folder or perhaps an old standard binder that you could easily grab and take with you when you're doing your site visit then. So that's that document. Any questions about comprehensive site visit? Okay. So we've talked about professional development, sustainability, and partnership templates. Talked about site monitoring and comprehensive site. So now we're going to move on to local evaluation. And again, I'm just continuing to scroll down the grant info screen. And we have our local evaluation template on here. This is the most recent template. We also have our local evaluator timeline and teacher survey, which I'll get to in just a moment. So this template document for local evaluation, sorry, as I'm clicking on this here, this is the report, for lack of a better word, that is due annually. Sorry, I'm grabbing this here, but my computer has decided to be very slow all of a sudden. And this document is information reported from the previous year. So you'll see here right out of the gate, this is for 2019-2020. So you're always a year behind in reporting your data. If you were a brand new cohort, you would have been collecting information and you'll report on this next year then. So this document is designed, here are the sections that you're going to be asked to report on. It's designed to give hard data evidence while also partnering with anecdotal evidence. So the stories and pictures of how your programming is truly making impact in the lives of kids. The information from these documents then is sent to Vic, where he usually spends a good chunk of winter reading through them because they can be fairly lengthy. And then these are taken to combine information into a state of Iowa report that's been sent to the federal government. Vic, what do you want to add to that?
Well, we actually read about 1,200 pages of local evaluation data, and we generally do follow-ups, double checking to make sure your data is accurate. We check the math, and then we put together a state report that goes onto the feds, and ours is usually over 100 pages, maybe 120, something like that. But it includes every single grantee in Iowa. We have a little write-up about it. So it's pretty comprehensive. And they just did a national evaluation longitudinal study, Deborah Vandell out of California. And Iowa had more evaluation data than any other state.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, we pride ourselves in being a leader in education and out of school time as well. So I think this is a really good indicator. Again, I'm not going to go through every single page in this document, but you'll see exactly what I mean. So here was that contact information, kind of that basic information about you as the grantee. Here's where we're looking at, oh, I'm sorry, here's some executive summary information. Here's where you're going to put your demographic data. So you'll see that we have things regarding attendance and special needs, ethnicity, partnerships, parent involvement, things of that nature. So if you think back to those templates that we talked about, those are really going to help you and your local evaluator to complete this document. You'll identify yourself by your cohort here. And again, we have the breakdowns for all of this demographic information. I'm going to scroll down to item number 4 here real quick. We'll also want to know about your measures. So we want to know, are you making progress with the kids? Are you improving in mathematics? Are you improving in English? Are you improving in your literacy skills, and so on and so forth? So again, this document is designed to provide the hard data components, which you're seeing here. But then towards the end of the document, we also have the opportunity for you to identify your local objectives and provide some of that anecdotal evidence as to how you're meeting those local objectives then. So, questions about local evaluation? Okay. So some of you have very well defined local objectives for your evaluation, and some of you may be looking to beef some of those up. So the next few seconds here of commentary are just designed to really kind of get you to think about. This is not required necessarily, unless you have built it in as a local objective, but a couple of things that I do want you to think about that some sites across the state choose to report on in their local evaluation documents is they'll provide teacher surveys, which is required for everybody in 21st century. But you also might want to consider doing some parent surveys, student surveys, or staff surveys. You can take information from those surveys to more fully develop your program. You can also take information to define local objectives. So perhaps your local objective is to have a parent attendance and satisfaction rate as it pertains to a certain kind of line of interaction or engagement. So that might be a local objective. Or you may want to boost your student involvement with some parameters in place as it pertains to maybe the formation of a student council or something like that. That could be a local objective. So you may want to implement a service learning curriculum or something of that nature. And again, you'll use some student survey data to support that type of a thing into your local objective. Vic, can you give some other examples or maybe expand on any of those additional types of surveys and how they connect to local objectives?
Well, the big thing that we see is some local objectives aren't really measurable. And if we see that on the evaluation, I'll contact you and say, can we set up a meeting and let's update those measures? Because I don't want you to shoot yourself in the foot. If you have a bad measure and you don't gather data, that looks bad. And you have to publicly post your evaluation for your community. And so, you don't want your community to think you're wasting taxpayer money. And we don't need to have 1 million local objectives. You can do a handful. 6 would be a nice maximum.
I think a fairly common local objective, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vic, probably centers something around STEM. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that can be a local objective.
Yeah. So your local objectives might be a nice way to highlight some of those additional academic or enrichment components that you're doing. But as Vic said, we need to make sure that they're measurable. And the other thing that kind of trips people up sometimes is, we have a lot of sites that set that bar really high. They're striving for 80, 85, 90, 95% of meeting that objective. And just a cautionary comment to that, we appreciate the the enthusiasm, but if you don't meet the goal, you're really kind of setting yourself up for some failure there. So if you have concerns or questions about that, I would strongly recommend contacting Vic to help you with your local objectives and the way you define them. Another thing that I think is important to recognize is that you should try to identify local objectives that will last throughout the duration of your grant, but that there is nothing inappropriate or wrong about adding an objective. If you have a goal for a certain year or something like that, you can certainly add that in. You just want to be very careful that you're not adding and deleting and adding and deleting every single year. But if you've defined a local objective in year one and you're meeting it with regularity, you might want to consider changing your local objectives, but have a discussion with Vic about that first.
Yep. Keep in mind that we're working with at-risk kids, most of whom have attendance issues. They might have some behavior problems, academic issues. I recommend greater than 50% across the board. That way you'll meet your objectives. And if you do 70, 80% in one year, you did fantastic. But then maybe the next year you get a different group of kids and you only got the 51%. So we want to have reasonable measures.
Absolutely. Any questions about local evaluation, local objectives? I would say this too, we don't have templates for parent surveys, student surveys, and staff surveys on here. But I do know that there are quite a few sites who use any or all of those tools. So if that's interesting to you, I'm happy to make a connection with you to another site that you can see what they're using and see if it's something that you maybe want to implement at your particular site. And I would say that we'll probably have some type of template in the future. We just don't have them on here right now. So are there any questions about local evaluation or any of the surveys or objectives? Okay, folks, we're in the home stretch here. So the next section I want to point out to you pertains to our data entry. We have these wonderful spreadsheets that you can link to on this page to collect your APR required data entry for spring, summer, and fall. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on these today because as it stands right now, our November new grantee meeting is designed to focus specifically on the APR. So we'll go into much more detail about these sheets at that point, but please feel free to hop over to the website and take a look at these documents. This is a nice snapshot tool that was designed by our program support committee, I think, unless I'm wrong, to be able to just readily collect that information so that you have it centrally located in one place. And when it comes time to do your APR data entry, you can simply pull up your spreadsheet and then plug in the numbers in the appropriate places. Now, again, we do know that COVID is going to have some type of an effect on this. So there will be more information coming. Vic is trying to do his best to provide updates on APR and new fields in the APR system as it pertains to COVID pretty regularly. But we'll focus on APR data entry at our November meeting. So unless somebody has a question regarding these forms, I'm going to move on. Okay. So the next thing I want to discuss is the statewide annual survey. This is a document that is sent out to you through a SurveyMonkey link, and we also include a PDF of the survey itself because it's fairly extensive. I don't know if you can see this very well, but it is 23 pages long when you print it out. This information is used, again, to provide a comprehensive report to the federal government about 21st century programming. A lot of the information is very similar to that is inputted into the APR system, as well as your local evaluation document. It's just put into a different format so that we can have a better plan for how we make that report to the federal government. This document is opened in mid-November. It's due in mid-January. And I would advise you that if you have questions about this, my contact information is in the form, which you'll be receiving here in just a few weeks. But it's a way, excuse me. If you have questions about this, you can certainly reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you with this. You're reporting a year behind again, so the information in this report will be from the 2019-2020 school year and the summer of 2019. So some of this is pre-COVID, some of it is current COVID, and again, we recognize that there could be some perhaps strange things that happen with numbers and such in this report. This survey is going to ask again for some pretty basic information, the number of sites you're serving, who's filing the report, your position, your email and phone number, which cohort you're actually with. And you can, if you're in multiple, you'll be able to select multiple cohorts. How much money you currently receive, how many students are being served, your partners, population of schools. Again, the list goes pretty extensive and pretty deep in here. We also ask questions. Okay, Sarah, good question. I'll get there in just a second, okay? We also want to know if you have a waiting list. We ask questions about your ELL students. We ask questions about what types of meals you're serving, if you're charging fees, and so on and so forth. So Sarah's question was, who do we recommend sharing or completing this document? I personally feel like this report is best completed by your project manager, program director, whatever title is appropriate for your organization. But I know when I was in that particular role, what I would do is, I'm kind of old school, guys, you know, I'm of a certain age, but what I would do is I would print out a copy of this PDF. I would handwrite my responses into it, and then I would hold a team meeting and we would review it as a team to make sure that I was appropriately collecting or responding to the data in a way that the staff was supportive of. So that's the way we did it where I came from. The director, whoever is indicated as a director for your 21st Century Grant will receive this link, but then from there, your director may choose to tap another staff member to do the actual completion. We've had it done a couple of different ways. So hopefully that's helpful. Vic or anybody else, is there anything that you would add to that comment? Does anybody have a certain way that you know your site completes the annual survey? Okay, so Sarah, hopefully that answers that question for you. And again, I'm happy to work with you individually, like the thumbs up, good. Happy to work with you individually if and when the time comes. I'm gonna scroll down here. Before we completely leave this page, I just wanna point out a few more things that are on this page in case you're looking for a reference. We do have a section on here that these are local evaluators who are open to additional work. So if your local evaluator is retiring, isn't working out for whatever reason, perhaps COVID has affected them in some way, shape, or form, you know, we hope not, but this is a list of people who might be willing to help you in your site. We also have a section on here for budget guidance, including the D3 Year 1 cumulative budget. And even though this says FY20 here, it's the same document. I've actually asked our website designer to be able to update this number, so that will be changing very soon. And then the last thing that I want to point out, logos, if you need to grab those for something, but we have this additional resource section down here, and it's also kind of sprinkled throughout. These are guidance things that you can pull up. We have a document here about the importance of field trips. We have some guidance on attendance. We have some guidance on family engagement. And these are really great tools for you to be able to access. You can incorporate them into perhaps a staff professional development offering. You can take it and compare it, excuse me, with what you're currently doing at your site to see if you're in line with best practice. We have a guide to program budgets and accounting, which, not being a huge fiscal component person, was a little bit dry to read, but it has valuable information in it. So please consider that. You'll also find, not just on this page, but on other pages as well. So for example, if you go to professional development, we have several recordings of past webinars, directors meetings, and so on and so forth that you can access that information. So for example, if I were to click on this best practice webinar, it's going to take me to these recordings that we've made and uploaded on here. So perhaps you're interested in learning more about, I'll just pick one here, advocacy training. You can look at this recording in PowerPoint and build that into your professional development offerings for yourself or your team. So I know that was me doing a lot of talking today, and I apologize for that. It's just a lot of documentation that we need to go through. We really do try our best here not to make additional work for you, but because these are federal dollars, you'll see that the level of reporting and accountability is very high. And I know personally, I feel good about that because you sometimes hear about programs that are less accountable. And I know that's not necessarily a good feeling for Joe or Jane Q public to have. But I feel like the 21st Century Program, particularly here in Iowa, does a wonderful job of building in accountability, reporting, and support. Because that's another thing I would share with you. Again, when I was at the conference in Colorado last fall, a couple of other sites were really, truly surprised at the amount of technical support and assistance that we do provide here in Iowa. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment. If anybody has questions, I would entertain those questions right now. I did want to put one more link into the box here. Let me pull this up real quick. The link I'm putting in now has the information on the 21cclc.com site. Excuse me. Where you can find the FY21 RFA materials and information. And then Vic also has that on the department site. Let me grab that link for you real quick here too. And other than that, I'm going to entertain questions at this point. One more thing I think I would say is some of you on the call today are perhaps not the program director. Maybe you do direct service, and that's fine. I think this is still a valuable webinar for you because sometimes we wonder why our management or administration makes us do the things we do, and now you know. So, all right.
Crystal, I do have a question. I also thank you. I wish I had this walkthrough of all the documents like 4 months ago. So thank you very much for this. This has been great. With the APR data collection, I know we didn't get into the forms. I briefly looked at them earlier, and that's due in December. I have not been into the APR system yet. Is it we fill out the Excel and we upload it? Or do we have to manually enter? How does that work?
Yeah, you will have to manually enter your information into the APR. But again, the spreadsheet aligns with the screens in the APR system. So it's really kind of designed to be the next best thing for you. Now, Sarah, just a quick side note for that. If you've not developed a login for the APR system, you're going to want to reach out to Tim Glynn to do that. And let me grab his email here real quick, and I'll drop that into the link. Tim will actually be co-presenting next month at our November meeting when we talk more in detail. Oh, thank you, Vic. Vic beat me to the punch. Tim will be co-presenting with Vic and myself next month, and he'll be going through any specific questions that you have about the login or the screen or technical support for the APR. Vic will be adding his 2 cents in as well, and then I, again, as a former grantee, I have experience with that system, so hopefully I can also provide some insight into that process. So. Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions today? All right, I am going to stop recording.